Ace Frehley stopped playing mid-solo. His hands lifted away from the strings, and the room fell into complete silence. The year was 1976. A recording studio in New York. Not the glamorous kind with gold records on the walls and leather couches. The working kind. Concrete floors. Fluorescent lights. Tape machines running hot. The kind of place where albums got made by people who knew what they were doing. Ace Frehley sat in the isolation booth with his Gibson Les Paul. Through the glass, he could see the producer, a man named Richard Coleman who'd worked with everyone from Aerosmith to the Rolling Stones. Coleman had a reputation. He knew sound. He knew records. And he didn't suffer fools. Beside Coleman sat another guitarist. Session player. Studio veteran. The kind of musician who could play anything in any style but whose name you never remember because he was there to serve the song, not to be the song. They'd been working on a track for 3 hours. A ballad. Something slow and emotional. Something that needed space and feeling, not technical fireworks. Ace had played it 6 times. 6 different takes. Each one technically perfect. Each one somehow wrong. Coleman's voice came through the talkback speaker. Ace, let's try it again. But this time, less effects. Just you and the guitar. Ace looked down at his pedal board. His setup. His sound. The chorus pedal that gave him that shimmer. The delay that made his notes float. The reverb that filled the space. No effects? Ace asked. No effects, Coleman confirmed. Just play. The session guitarist leaned toward Coleman's microphone. He's going to sound thin without the processing. You sure about this? Coleman didn't answer. He just looked at Ace through the glass. Waiting. Ace reached down and clicked off every pedal. One by one. The lights went dark. His sound, the Ace Frehley sound that people recognized, that defined his playing, was gone. Just the raw guitar signal going straight into the amplifier. He picked up his guitar. Settled it against his body. Put his fingers on the strings. And began to play. Ace didn't defend himself. He never did. The melody was simple. Almost too simple. Just a few notes, repeated with slight variations. No speed. No technical showmanship. No effects to hide behind. But something happened in that booth. The notes hung in the air with a weight they hadn't carried before. Each one fully formed. Each one exactly where it needed to be. Ace wasn't playing fast. He wasn't playing loud. He was playing true. Coleman sat forward in his chair. The session guitarist stopped looking at his phone. The engineer turned away from the meters and just listened. Ace played through the first verse. His eyes were closed. His body swayed slightly with the rhythm, but his hands were still. Economy of motion. No wasted movement. Just fingers finding notes, and letting them breathe. The chorus approached. The section where Ace had been trying to build to something big in all the previous takes. Where he'd added runs and fills and tried to make it explode. This time, he did something different. He simplified it even more. Just 3 notes. Bent slowly. Held. Released. And again. And again. The repetition wasn't boring. It was hypnotic. Like a mantra. Like someone saying the same thing over and over until you finally understood what they meant. Coleman's hand was on the talkback button, but he didn't press it. He didn't want to interrupt. The session guitarist sat completely still, his arms crossed, listening with the kind of attention you only give to something that surprises you. Ace played into the bridge. Still no effects. Still no complexity. Just the naked sound of a guitar and an amplifier and a player who understood that sometimes less is the only way to say more. His left hand found a chord. Held it. Let it ring. Then he stopped. Not because the song was over. The backing track was still playing. There were 8 more bars. A final chorus. A fade out. But Ace lifted his hands away from the strings. Slowly. Deliberately. like he was releasing something fragile into the air. The guitar rang out. The natural resonance of wood and wire. No effects to sustain it. Just physics and time. And then silence. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. Through the glass, Ace could see Coleman and the session guitarist looking at each other. Not speaking. Just processing what they'd heard. The backing track finished. The tape machine clicked to a stop. Nobody said anything. Ace set his guitar down carefully, leaning it against the amplifier. He stepped out of the isolation booth into the control room. Coleman was rewinding the tape, his face unreadable. The session guitarist was staring at the console like it had just told him something he didn't want to hear. That was... Coleman started, then stopped. He rubbed his face with both hands. Play it back. The engineer pressed play. The sound filled the control room. And this time, hearing it from the outside, Ace understood what he'd done. The simplicity wasn't weakness. It was clarity. The space between the notes wasn't emptiness. It was meaning. The moment he'd stopped playing wasn't surrender. It was completion. Away from the spotlight, Ace made a choice no one expected. The playback finished. Silence again. The session guitarist spoke first. His voice was quiet. Almost apologetic. I couldn't have played that. Ace looked at him. Sure you could. It's just 3 notes. No. The guitarist shook his head. I could play those notes. But I couldn't. I couldn't make them mean that. I would have kept going. Added something. Tried to fill the space. Most people would have. Coleman said, still not looking up from the console. He was making notes on the track sheet. That's why most people aren't Ace Frehley. Ace didn't respond. Didn't need to. Coleman pressed the intercom to the outer studio where the rest of the band had been waiting. We got it. 1 take. Come listen. The other musicians filed into the control room. The bassist. The drummer. The keyboard player who'd been smoking cigarettes in the hallway for the past hour. They stood around the console while Coleman played the track back. Ace watched their faces. The bassist nodded slowly, eyes closed, feeling it. The drummer smiled, not the excited smile of someone hearing something flashy, but the knowing smile of someone recognizing truth. The keyboard player leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and when the track ended he just said, "Damn." Ace, Coleman said, finally making eye contact. I've been producing records for 15 years. I've worked with players who can do things on guitar that seem impossible. Speed, technique, complexity. But what you just did, he gestured at the tape machine. That's something different. That's wisdom. It's just playing, Ace said. No, the session guitarist interrupted. It's knowing when to stop playing. There's a difference. Coleman stood up, walked over to the tape machine, and carefully removed the reel. He held it like it was valuable. Fragile. This is going on the album exactly as it is. No edits. No overdubs. No effects added in the mix. Just this. He looked at Ace. Do you know why you stopped playing when you did? Ace considered the question. He could have given a technical answer. Could have talked about arrangement, or dynamics or musical theory. Instead he said, the song was already done. I was just the last one to realize it. What followed silenced everyone in the room. Coleman placed the tape reel back on the machine. He pressed rewind. The tape spooled backward with that distinctive mechanical whir. I want to tell you something, Coleman said, his back still turned to the room. 3 months ago, I was working with another guitarist. Big name. You'd know him. We were doing a similar track. Ballad. Emotional. Simple. He turned around. That guy played for 4 hours straight. Overdub after overdub. Trying every possible combination of notes. Every pedal. Every technique. And you know what we ended up with? Nobody answered. Nothing. Nothing usable. Because he couldn't get out of his own way. He couldn't trust the song. He had to prove something. Had to show everyone how good he was. Coleman pointed at the tape machine. You just proved something too, Ace. But not about how good you are. About how good you are at listening. Most players talk with their guitars. You had a conversation. And you knew when to shut up and let the other side respond. The session guitarist nodded. I've been doing sessions for 10 years. Playing on other people's records. Serving the song. That's what they always tell you. Serve the song. But nobody really does it. Everybody wants their moment. Their signature. Their proof that they were there. He gestured toward the isolation booth where Ace's guitar still leaned against the amplifier. You just served the song so completely that you disappeared into it. And that's when you became unforgettable. Ace looked at his guitar through the glass. The Gibson Les Paul. The instrument that had been with him through countless shows, recordings, tours. Right now, it looked like just what it was, wood and wire and magnets. Nothing magical. Nothing special. Except in the hands of someone who understood that magic isn't about showing what you can do. It's about knowing what you don't need to do. Coleman sat back down at the console. Everyone out. I'm going to mix this right now while it's fresh. Ace, you can stay if you want. The other musicians filed out. The bassist clapped Ace on the shoulder as he passed. The drummer gave him a quiet thumbs up. The keyboard player just nodded, the kind of nod that says, I see you. I understand. The session guitarist was the last to leave. He stopped at the door. Ace, can I ask you something? Yeah. How long have you been playing guitar? Since I was 13. And how long did it take you to learn to stop playing? Ace thought about it. About all the shows where he'd played too much. All the solos where he'd added notes just because he could. All the times he'd tried to fill every second with sound because silence felt like failure. I'm still learning, he said. The session guitarist smiled. Aren't we all? He left. The door clicked shut. It was just Ace and Coleman in the control room now. The producer pulled up the faders, adjusted the EQ, added just a touch of room ambience. Not much. Just enough to place the guitar in a space. You know what's going to happen when this song comes out? Coleman asked. What? Every guitarist in the world is going to try to figure out what effects you used. What pedal created that tone? What amp settings you had? There weren't any effects, Ace said. I know. That's the point. They're going to be looking for some secret weapon. Some piece of gear. Some trick. Coleman pushed the master fader up. The song filled the room at full volume. That simple melody. Those 3 bend notes. The silence that followed. And they're going to miss the whole thing. Coleman continued. Because the secret wasn't in the gear. It was in the choice. The choice to stop. The choice to trust that what you'd said was enough. He looked at Ace. Most people spend their whole lives trying to be heard. You just showed them that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is go quiet and let your words finish speaking on their own. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The song was released 4 months later. It became the most requested track on the album. Not the fastest. Not the flashiest. The quietest. Radio programmers loved it because it gave them space. DJs could talk over the intro, and the song would still hit its emotional mark. Guitar magazines analyzed it. Multiple transcriptions appeared, all slightly different, all trying to capture what Ace had played. None of them could quite explain why it worked. Because what Ace had done wasn't in the notes. It was in the pauses. It was in the restraint. It was in knowing that the song had already spoken, and his job wasn't to add to it. His job was to recognize when it was complete. Years later, at a guitar clinic, a young player asked Ace about that track. What were you thinking when you stopped playing before the song ended? Ace looked at the kid. Earnest. Hungry. Probably practiced 8 hours a day trying to get faster, cleaner, more technical. I was thinking, Ace said, that I'd said what I needed to say. And anything else would have just been me talking to hear myself talk. But weren't you worried people would think you gave up? That you couldn't finish it? No, Ace said. Because finishing it would have meant ruining it. He picked up his guitar. The hardest thing to learn isn't how to play faster or cleaner. It's how to recognize when the song is already complete. When your job is done. When the next note would be one too many. The kid nodded, not quite understanding yet. But someday he would. That recording session became legendary among musicians. Not for what was played, but for what wasn't. The tape still exists in the studio archive. Coleman kept the original reel in a climate-controlled vault. On the box, in his handwriting, Ace Frehley the day he stopped. Ace never played that song with effects again. Every live performance, every version, just guitar, amp, and the wisdom to know when silence speaks louder than sound. The Gibson Les Paul he used that day hangs in his home studio. He doesn't play it often. But sometimes, late at night, he picks it up and plays those 3 notes. And then stops. Because the song already said everything it needed to say.